Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 11 of the Overtime Show podcast. It's been quite a while since we've last done episode 10. We've been very busy with university work or lack thereof. I hope you're all doing well, all your listeners. Today, we're going to be doing a free agency and trade episode, and we've also got plans for a NFL draft podcast coming up in the future. I'd like to do something interesting with that with some guests, but today I'm joined by both of my co-hosts, Mitchell and Jeremy. How you doing, guys?
Swell.
Yeah, all good.
You look it. So yeah, we're just gonna dive right in. Mitchell, what were some of your biggest free agent moves? Maybe ones that shocked you a little bit that you didn't think were going to go through.
I think the biggest shock for me is the transformation of the line for the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs, as they were last year, will be the Super Bowl favorites again, and there's not really a reason not to. But the Chiefs' biggest moves might have been releasing Mitchell Schwartz and Eric Fisher. And the big signing that they made is those are both tackles, and the big signing they made was Joe Thuney. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but he is a guard. They also signed Kyle Long, who just didn't play in the NFL last year, but he's pretty vocal, and we kind of know what the situation was there. And he's only owed $1.1 million unless he does perform. So to me, the best team in the NFL right now, transforming their offensive line, and that big signing, it was 5 years, $80 million with $32.5 million fully guaranteed for Thuney, the offensive guard. To me, there are also a couple of big signings of centers. I think these offensive linemen, the Cardinals, for example, they picked up J.J. Watt, but Rodney Hudson, center, might be a bigger signing than most people think. So to me, the changing offensive lines are more impactful than people think, and the Chiefs going all in on some pretty big changes when you're protecting the most valuable asset in the league is the biggest story thus far.
Do you think they're going to keep him at left guard, or do you think they'll move him around?
I think it really depends who's healthy and how Long looks in camp. But guard to tackle is not as simple as people feel. But again, I mean, because of injuries and such, they had 4 or 5 different starting tackles last year. So it's not like they're out of experience, but they saved themselves a ton of money that they owed to Fisher, who people forget sometimes was a number 1 overall pick. But I do think they're going to keep him at guard because I think they probably know better what they have right now, and I wouldn't be surprised if they draft there or if there's another big signing to come that we don't know about. That was the thing. There are a handful of signings. There's some like I don't think are as big a deal as people think, like Galladay, but some of the biggest signings were simply re-signings. Like we talked about, could Russell and Rodgers move? Could we really see the QB carousel kick into gear? And it didn't happen because people know that is something you can't let go of. And so to me, the re-signings and the lack of movement is as big a story as anything. And obviously we thought the first domino to fall, or a domino that would be a catalyst for big quarterbacks moving, was Deshaun Watson. I don't think anyone wants to touch him right now. So it's going to be interesting going forward. I'm very curious if draft day we see another really big person move, but we'll have to see.
How about you, Jeremy? What have you what have your opinions been of the first couple of weeks of free agency, or the free agency period?
I mean, I think Mitchell's left the big one out. What about the man that dominated your rivals in the Super Bowl in Shaq Barrett? I mean, 4 years, $68 million seems like an absolute steal when there was numbers being thrown around there. He could be going to Denver for somewhere around $120 million. I mean, that is a massive amount of money to leave on the table. And when you put, that together, Levante David coming back for 2 years, $25 million, and Ndamukong Suh coming back, Chris Godwin franchise tagged. I mean, it feels like it's just the Arsenal's only just it's not going to stay the same. It's going to get bigger. They've got some real big weapons already and some good young guys on defense as well as offense. So I think the Bucks completely and utterly dominated the free agency. Like Mitchell says, like the likes of Kenny Galladay, you see guys here maybe B plus talents getting, superstar money. and free agency can be a little bit ridiculous. I think the best free agent signings are always the ones that are usually somewhere around the offensive line, because they always feel like value for money signings. So the likes of Corey Linsley going to the Chargers, as he said already, Joe Tooney going as well. So yeah, I think it's been a pretty. I don't think free agency's been as exciting as we all thought it was going to be. I think we all felt that Tampa Bay nucleus was going to break up a little bit. Ndamukong Suh was going to go somewhere else, and Shaq Barrett was going to move, and we'll see what happens with Antonio Brown. But it's been a little bit more quiet than I thought was going to happen. And obviously, Deshaun Watson not being traded and everything that's going on with him at the minute, so it's been a little bit more quieter than I expected. But I think the draft is where the big sort of fireworks of this year's offseason are going to be.
Yeah, I was very excited by the 49ers trade. I think I'm glad they made a big push. And I think both sides are going to win out huge. I mean, we did discuss, was yesterday, who we think they're going to draft. I still think, I've seen people now talking a lot more about Mac Jones being the signing. I personally like Justin Fields, and I can see why he's going to be a big boom or bust. But I think that's going to be an interesting development, the 49ers trading up. What do you think, Mitchell, about the Justin Simmons re-signing? Are you happy with him coming back? Was it for it's like nearly 70 mil?
Yeah, I mean, it's the going rate. I think right now Denver went from a lot of concerns to mostly being concerned about the quarterback. I think them re-signing Simmons and Miller and Kareem Jackson and picking up Fuller, it creates a pretty scary defense when you add Chubb in there. They are still looking at linebackers. I wouldn't be surprised if that's where they draft. To me, it makes it all of a sudden that if Drew Lock takes a step forward or there's a quarterback in there, I think Simmons makes all the difference. I think sometimes you have a guy in that secondary and, no one's going to be the Legion of Boom or the no-fly zone again, but he changes the way that teams play. And I think he's very quietly done that. Like Pro Football Focus loves him, but he wasn't getting a lot of love in a lot of the other areas where people are voting. And part of that is that he's in Denver and we suck right now. But I think that was a huge re-sign. That's when I think of free agent signings. Yeah. The fact that Barrett stayed in Tampa, he clearly gave them a discount for wanting to be somewhere where he thinks that they're going to be competitive again. And I think for Simmons, it was the opposite. He was going to get max money because he's not guaranteed that they're going to be competitive again. So I think it was an overall solid move. When I think about wasting money, you also have to remember that money is always going to go up. And so the NFL just signed over $100 billion worth of new television contracts. So this salary cap that's going down is going to start shooting up. So another thing people noticed is that a lot of the free agent contracts signed this year were actually longer. And normally NFL teams don't want to commit to longer, but I think they're committing to longer because they know that they're locking in these lower rates, because when the salary cap shoots up, it's going to be at a higher rate. So when Kirk Cousins signed for the most money ever for a quarterback, or Matthew Stafford did the same thing, people were freaking out. And then 2 years later, they realized, the going rate for a quarterback is just going to keep rising. So when I look at Justin Simmons, I think the same thing for safeties. The way they had already franchise tagged him one time, the going rate for a safety is just going to keep going up. So if you have one of the best ones and you can get him in on that level and maybe have a year where he's making that average money before it really springs up, I think you have to take that opportunity.
Do you agree, Jeremy?
Yeah, no, I agree with Mitchell. Partly as well, I think why teams are given longer contracts is to try and massage the cap, because obviously the cap is going down. And a lot of these teams, like, for example, my Seahawks have got, you'll have it as well, Joe, with Rodgers, is our quarterbacks are on a massive big payroll and they take up a big chunk. And when that contract was given, it was within view that the salary cap was going to continuously go up and up and up. With the salary cap coming down, one way to massage the cap would be to maybe give someone the money they want plus an extended year. So obviously when that happens, it obviously, the money is then a bit more, so you can spread the money out a little bit more to help your cap and massage your cap a little bit. Obviously, a lot of these guys like Shaq Barrett have been locked down for their prime. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, when you've got a quarterback like Tom Brady making the money he's making, you can make all these sorts of different moves, and the salary cap coming down doesn't quite affect you as bad. Whereas people, were criticizing the likes of the Packers for not re-signing Corey Lindsey. They simply can't do it because you can't invest most of your money into your quarterback and your center. You have to be able to spread it around, and that's the problem I think a lot of teams in free agency have faced, is why it maybe hasn't been as explosive as we thought, is because the whole coronavirus has affected the cap, and with the cap coming down, teams can't really be able to make these long-term moves. The only teams that can really do that are teams that have either you've got a quarterback in there who is not making a lot of money, which would tend to be a rookie quarterback, or you've got someone like the Panthers who maybe with Teddy Bridgewater, who you can bring all these guys in, but you're not going to win a Super Bowl because Teddy Bridgewater can't take you to a Super Bowl. So it's been a little bit underwhelming, but that's all I think due to a lot of the financial problems at the minute that some of these teams are facing. Well, not financial problems, tightening of the cap really. But no, in terms of stuff about what Mitchell said about the going rate for players, I think some of the deals have been smart. The likes of the Broncos keeping Simmons, that was a good move. They're always in a position where, with their contract situation with their quarterback, they can make these kind of moves because it's not going to really affect them too badly. The Fuller one was a little bit strange considering where they are in the draft. They could easily go get someone like a Patrick Surtain, who would have been a bit more longer term view. But I understand the Fuller signing. I get it, but
we're desperate. I mean, we needed more than
yeah,
one quarter.
Yeah, exactly. I would maybe expect them to try and have made a move for a quarterback in the off season. Maybe they would have traded for Darnold, but it's been a little bit of a nobody seems to know what anyone's doing outside of the top three in the draft. So there's that much going on in terms of teams restructuring this year. It's kind of slightly impacted the free agency, but it's still been decent. There's still been good. There's some teams that have made really good moves.
I think following up on that, Jeremy, when you talk about a lot of people talking about the Jets, trading Darnold, which we need to touch on. Mm-hmm. I thought they got good value back in return, getting 3 picks, including a second rounder. Like, I didn't think that was bad at all. But one thing people are saying is it gives them also a reset. If they think, okay, what if Wilson's ceiling is just what Darnold's ceiling was, which, by the way, I think Darnold has the opportunity to be a lot better. I think he was in a bad situation. Like, well, at least we're going to do it with 2 more years of that lower cap hit at the quarterback spot. Because the thing is, if Darnold had one decent year this year, if he just played all right, then they were going to have to pay him, a certain rate, and they're going to get that for less. So if they're thinking we're really just going from one quarterback at a skill level to the exact same skill level, at least we have the space to put stuff around him so that if he does develop better, now we have a couple years with some more market leeway. Stafford, who is the biggest quarterback that moved? Is it
I think it is Stafford with that trade.
Stafford and Goff. Yeah.
The Patriots re-signed Cam Newton, whatever that means. We didn't see anyone too big move. People are still thinking Bridgewater or Dalton. I forgot Dalton was also signed. It's probably going to start for the Bears, but Bridgewater might move, but he has a $17 million cap hit. That's too much for the likes of the Broncos. That's the thing, is like, I wouldn't have been mad about Darnold, but is that a big uptick from Drew Lock? I don't think we know that for sure yet. So for me, it's not surprising that until this draft happens, we're not going to know who's willing to maybe overpay for a mediocre quarterback, it's going to be interesting because the Broncos are at 9. So it's like, do they want to see, is a quarterback going to fall to them? I don't think so. I think they'd have to move up to 6, probably, maybe 7. So, and sometimes you waste draft capital moving up 2 spots. And I'm just, so the quarterback carousel is not as big as we thought, but it's because there's these random little people are talking about like Nick Foles and Gardner Minshew. I'm like, get out. I'll take Drew Lock over those guys. Like, not that they haven't played much better than him at points, but
you wouldn't take Minshew Mania.
Oh, the entertainment wears off after about 3. Like,
until he throws the football.
But I think the Broncos are in the same. I don't say that just as a Broncos fan. I think a lot of teams are in that same position where they would like a small upgrade, something maybe they even feel is reliable, or maybe they're like, you know what, we have better pieces around our quarterback than the Jets or the Jaguars do, or even the Panthers do. So maybe we bring this guy in, a change of scenery, a better staff, a better team. I think a lot of that's how the Broncos feel right now. And I think a lot of teams do that, but they're hesitant to overpay for these middling quarterbacks that are out there now. And so I think Watson moving would have been a big domino. I think if Rodgers or Russell had really wanted out and weren't just playing mind games while they host Jeopardy and shit, like then yeah, there would be a little bit different mentality, but everyone's going to stand pat until this draft happens. I wouldn't even be surprised if the Broncos just don't waste and go with Drew Lock, and then they're really the top of the market next year for whatever quarterback becomes available. But it there's a lot of question marks until we get to draft day. I think one more team is going to want to make a pretty big move up, so we'll see what turns out there.
Yeah. Plus, sorry, we got to remember as well. I mean, everyone's saying next year. Well, like quarterback who's coming out, we had no idea how good he was going to be. So these sorts of guys, when they're coming out, you don't know what it's going to look like in a year's time as well. So some of the teams that haven't exactly maybe given up their entire draft stock, you look at someone next year, right? Like Spencer Rattler is probably going to be one of the guys available next year. So teams that maybe haven't given up everything to go get a quarterback this year and shaking up free agency, because we all know that this time next year there'll be 4 quarterbacks at least who are all mentioned as potential, franchise savers. So, and we know next year as well. I mean, I think Russell Wilson will probably be available next year. Rodgers will probably be available next year. Deshaun Watson probably still going to be available next year. Maybe someone like Tua Tagovailoa might be up as well. So every year there's a plethora of quarterbacks available, and next year will be no different. There'll be in the draft there'll be 3-4 quarterbacks, and in the offseason there'll be 6 that get spoken about moves. I mean, someone like Jared Goff, if he might be available next year. I know his cap number's massive, but if he has one bad year, will someone like a Washington trade to go get him, knowing what he can do? It's all these sort of things will happen. So teams don't tend to panic as much as what the media do. The media feel like, if you don't go get your quarterback now, your franchise will be in purgatory for the next 10 years. So these guys in charge of these teams are mostly smart. So they'll not be pressing the panic button and making ridiculous moves in all season to try and get a quarterback in. So, but I think Mitchell's right. I think somebody's going to shoot up the draft to go get a quarterback, and I think it's going to depend on who falls. I mean, if it's Justin Fields who falls, someone will probably go up to 6. If I had to put any money on a dark horse to move up, it would be the Steelers to try and get Justin Fields. I would probably suspect they might do that, but it all depends. I mean, they've re-signed Juju for I think 1 year. I think they give him 1 year, $10 million. So I get the feeling somewhere like Pittsburgh might have a bit of a rethink, which is why they've sort of went with the loan options this year. So, but yeah, just as we've been saying, I mean, it's always fun to watch.
Yeah, if Fields pass goes below 5, that 5 to 10 minutes between picks 5 and 6 could be fascinating, because if the Niners are really on Jones like people say they are, Trey Lance some people have him too on their big board. I mean, I don't think we're going to go 5 for 5 in the first 5 picks, but if Fields drops, man, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a big prospective trade that takes place between there. And I am all about selling the house for Watson. Obviously that is a whole new situation that no one's going to want. Like we're not going to see that resolved before the draft, but not like none of those top 5 are a sure thing. Even Trevor Lawrence, look, I love, like, the last sure thing to come out was Andrew Luck. And I think Andrew Luck was a really good quarterback and had potential for greatness. And him leaving the league doesn't really change that. But like, if that even is Trevor Lawrence's ceiling, which people think it's higher for sure, of course, it's what you do. I still don't know. It's still a guy coming from college in the NFL. You only sell the house for Peyton Manning, for Aaron Rodgers, for Watson. So the amount that it's going to cost people to move up, and someone will do it, is going to be for an unguaranteed young guy because of the potential of it. So while everyone's a little bit more cagey than the media would like them to be, and we panic more, you're absolutely right. Someone will make a stupid move for a rookie. That's all.
Yeah, I think something interesting that I've seen people talking about is that, so if we think that Sam Darnold is younger than Joe Burrow, he's going to be moving to a team with Joe Brady, who's already proven that he can turn a relatively unknown 5th, 6th round pick to a number 1 overall Heisman winning quarterback. I can see people being very excited about Sam Darnold going to the Panthers, because he's going to go to that team and he's going to have no real excuse to perform badly. He's going to have better receivers. He's going to have, he's going to have, who's the Jets? Roby Anderson. He's on the Panthers now, right?
Yeah.
So they've already got a connection. He's played with Bridgewater already. He's going to have that morale with the team, and I think it's going to have a great dynamic between him and Joe Brady, and that's going to be exciting to see. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Darnold play. Do you think the Dolphins made the right decision moving down the draft and appearing like they are going to keep Tua around for at least another season?
I think you probably have to give him another year. It's not very fair to judge a quarterback off his first year, especially someone like Tua Tagovailoa, who was coming off an injury anyway in the offseason. And you think about it as well, rookie quarterback coming in, virtual OTAs, coming off an injury. All of a sudden the Dolphins' expectations went from just finishing behind the Patriots and maybe sneaking in at 8-8 to all of a sudden going, well, we can win the division. So their expectations went through the roof. And there were some games like the game against the Cardinals, up against Kyler Murray, when he looked brilliant. So I think what they might do, which what they acquired Fuller on that 1-year deal, which was a prove-it deal. But again, it's their free agency moves have all basically been to surround Tua Tagovailoa. They let go of Ryan Fitzpatrick. The keys to the franchise are firmly into his hands. I think they probably take someone like Kyle Pitts, give him that double tight end look with him and Gesicki. You'll have Fuller on the outside. So I think they're going to probably look draft-wise to help Tua, but I think it's the right decision. I think if you're going to move off a quarterback in year one, you've got to almost basically have allowed him to play 16 games, and he's got to look really bad. Like, I mean, really bad for you to move off of him after year one. And, you look at some other guys. I mean, Carson Wentz, first year of the Eagles, he went 6-10. Next year, MVP, near MVP season. Josh Allen, his first year with Buffalo, was good, but not great. He had some highlights when he jumped over Anthony Barr, and then, but the record was still terrible, so you've got to give these guys a chance. It's not very often you get guys like Russell Wilson who come into the team and immediately they're winning 10 games. It doesn't really happen. So he'll get another year. If he goes, say, something like gets near 10 wins this year, the script will completely flipped onto Tagovailoa. The question for me is, I think Tua is definitely an NFL quarterback. There's no doubt about it. But it's what type is he? Is he more Teddy Bridgewater, or can this guy elevate other players to a level to get into the playoffs and win Super Bowls? Because eventually we know when you pay the guy, he's going to have to elevate other talent around him. That's what establishes a great quarterback. So now that you've given him a bit more weapons and now you've firmly made him the number one quarterback, we're going to see if he can excel with these weapons first before he then has to elevate other people. So this is essentially step 2 of the Dolphins' process to evaluate Tua Tagovailoa. But I think they made the right choice in keeping him.
Teams have to start giving quarterbacks 2 years to develop and actually play the game. You saw what happened with Josh Allen. By the way, Josh Allen played great in a lot of ways, but it's still not, he still might not be an all-timer. His ceiling might still be like Carson Palmer, a slightly better Kirk Cousins. Obviously, he's a different style of quarterback than those guys, but those are franchise guys. That's the guy where for 5 straight years, you have the confidence coming into camp, who your guy is, and you can build around him. I know everyone wants to shoot for the next star, and that's great. Absolutely. I think there's a lot of depth at the quarterback position in the NFL at the moment. But I really like what the Dolphins did, and I'm a hypocrite because I just don't believe in Drew Lock on my end. But you have to start giving these guys a couple of years. It's not like you're losing a ton of money. If you're smart, you're using that money to remain competitive by putting the right things around him. They kept pulling Tua in the second half, which, that is a large cause for concern and everything. But it's just an interesting dichotomy in the NFL. Like, sometimes you have to stop chasing the Drew Brees and settle, for maybe the Jared Goff. So you can't all rely on one thing. And so I like what the Dolphins did. And I think they should stick to it. I also want to point out, we are probably the first free agent podcast. Obviously, this conversation is played out, but we haven't mentioned the Patriots, who made 50 signings. I just want to take the time to compare it to the Lakers. Even though LeBron barely played his first year there, they signed a bunch of guys to 1-year deals. and it was just like, let's see how this works. Obviously, Bill Belichick will make it work to the best. Like, he's obviously a great coach. But I just have to say, I think all those signings are overhyped, and they overpaid for 2 mediocre receivers. And yeah, they'll be better this year, but they're not going to make a leap for a long time. I'm very interested to see what quarterback they grab in whatever manner that they do, because I think that's telling, because as much as I hate them, those are smart people right there.
Yeah,
So
I
it
think
was Hunter Henry, and who's the receiver?
the tight end Johnny Smith from the Titans.
Johnny Smith. Yeah.
I think Mitchell's right. I think the wide receivers are slightly overblown. I think everyone going about Nelson Aguilar. Like, Nelson Aguilar is not this great, deep receiver. He is dangerous. He can get in behind. You can throw the ball over the top. But like let's not pretend he's Julio Jones or something like that. Like that's not what it is.
3 receiver, you need to have someone else taking away the best corner and misdirecting the best safety before he can make plays most of the time.
Yeah, so don't get me wrong. I think the 2 tight end signings are really, really. I think they're great, and they're going to run a lot more 2 tight end sets. There's no doubt about that. The fact you're comparing Hunter Henry to Lance Stevenson is not something I would do. I wouldn't put those guys in the same bracket, but I get your idea. I get the idea behind it. I think Mitchell is right. The Patriots, there's a lot made about the money they spent. We all know the Patriots sort of bread and butter is getting guys in free agency, not drafting guys. That's something they're a lot better at doing. So this doesn't surprise me that they went and got these guys. They had a lot of holes. The only thing is the Patriots have a lot of guys coming back off the COVID list from last year, so they are going to be better. The question is how much better.
I want them to go get Jimmy Garoppolo. I still want to see it.
To me, the thing is as well is because they have Cam Newton on such a low contract, they do have a lot of options. They can go get Jimmy G. You can make a move for Teddy Bridgewater if you wanted. Not something I would do. But there are different avenues they can go, and they can also try and move up in the draft. That's not something Belichick usually does. But if 1 or 2 guys drop, he might do it. He might pull the trigger. But I think the Patriots, you're looking at a team that probably will have an above 500 record next year. But their division is almost getting to the stages of that's one of the best divisions in football. If the Jets turn themselves around with Robert Saleh, and I think they will, then you look at Miami, very functional and looking very good. You've
With
got
a lot
the
of capital as well.
Yeah, massive draft capital. You look at the Bills, who they've strengthened in the offseason by signing Emmanuel Sanders. They now look really good on the offensive side of the ball, and they're still going to be one of the best teams in the AFC, if not the second best team. So all of a sudden that division is fast becoming one of the best divisions in football. It's going from the AFC least to nearly the AFC best. It is going to be quite interesting to see what happens in that division, but I'm slightly more optimistic on the Patriots because I don't hate them as much as Mitchell does. So I suspect they'll be
blasphemy.
These moves do not put the Patriots in Super Bowl talk. Let's get that right, but it does put them in playoff contention.
Here's a conspiracy theory for you. Josh McDaniels came to the Denver Broncos to make them worse for the next 4 years after he left in order to make the Patriots better for those 4 following years. It was sabotage from day one. That's why he hasn't taken a head coaching job since. And he's a bad person. Ask Titans fans.
We'll swiftly move on over that. We've just encroached on the 40-minute mark. So there's 2 more free agency signings I want to talk about quickly. Of course, you have to talk about JJ Watt. Were the Cardinals the right choice for him? And do you think it's a good move by the Cardinals to sign him? Will he be able to produce the 20-plus sack seasons that he's had in the past now that he's over 30?
I mean, is it a good signing for the Cardinals? Yes, because they did need an edge rusher. JJ Watt is not going to play every down. He's going to be one of those guys who, when he does play, you insert him in, it's going to be basically straight into 5th gear with him. You're not going to play around with it. Whether or not it's the right destination for him, I'm not convinced. I thought going to Green Bay would have been better. I think he could have went. There's a couple of other places he could have gone. Somewhere like the Chiefs, even if they were looking for an edge rusher, to maybe try and move off Frank Clark because he's on a massive contract. But the Cardinals just feels weird. Like the Cardinals feel like the Cardinals feel like they almost regret last year not really going and getting a huge amount of people to surround Kyler Murray with. And now that there's really 2-3 year window left with his contract situation, they've basically went and got 2-3 year rentals. But these rentals they're not premier rentals. They're just not like the Rodney Hudson signing's fantastic. That locks down the middle of your offensive line, which was awful last year. But the JJ Watt doesn't make sense. Yes.
Look, I love JJ Watt, and I'm of two minds here because I think he will be an impact player and I want him to do well. He's someone you root for, and he's still going to be really good. He's not washed, but he's on the backside and he's been injured a lot. So to me, I'm curious who was really in the sweepstakes for JJ Watt because, well, I'm glad he didn't jump like to the Chiefs to just really try and grab a ring, Kevin Durant style. I'm also wish he would have gone somewhere slightly more competitive to try and get a little bit further as he hits this stage of his career. But I don't think rings define JJ. Obviously, he's not a quarterback, so we evaluate a great defensive player differently. So I wish him well, but Arizona confuses me. It makes me think there wasn't as big of a market. But I think if you're them, I think it is absolutely worth it to have him. But yeah, he's no longer a full-time take over the game guy. Maybe he'll do it once or twice a year, a quarter or two here and there. He'll do some really great things. He's definitely not a bad guy to have in there, but we're not talking about JJ Watt from 3 years ago.
Yeah, and plus just the attitude. I mean, JJ Watt's not quite at the Ndamukong Suh stage where if he wants to win a ring, it's going to have to be in the next couple of years. When this contract ends, if he really wants to win a ring, he'll have the pick of the lot. He's not in his prime by any means, but he's still better than probably 60% of edge rushers in the league. So it made sense for the Cardinals to go get him. I think they were bidding against themselves. I think Green Bay probably put an offer down and said, look, this is it. We're sticking with it. You take it or leave it. I think the Cardinals were blindly bidding against themselves. But it makes sense for them. They need another star as well on that team to attract attention. JJ Watt's a big name. But yeah, he's not the player he used to be. But he will probably still have an impact, just nowhere near as much as what he did in the Texans.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I guess the final guy I want to talk about is the Dak Prescott signing, getting close to the money that he wanted. Is he the guy for the Cowboys, considering he was throwing, I think, like over 400 yards a game before he got injured? Did they make the right decision paying him the money that he basically asked for?
Yeah.
I don't think they had a choice. I think they had to. Again, like when we're talking about the quarterbacks this year, who realistically could they have got who was better than Dak? They were never going to trade for Sam Darnold. That wasn't going to happen. So you look at their quarterback situation and Dak makes sense. The problem is there just isn't anyone available. The only thing they maybe could have done is tried to move up into one of those top 3 spots and get someone like a Justin Fields. But them not paying him for a year, 2 years has told me what they think of him. They've told me they don't really believe in him as their out-and-out quarterback. And, as we've seen with Russell Wilson this year, just because you paid your quarterback does not necessarily mean you believe in him. There are different stages to that. So I think they made the signing that they had to make. Dak does. There are definitely things with his leadership traits and how he is around the locker room that will played into that contract, and how they performed last year without him will have played into that contract. But they're not winning a Super Bowl with Dak. It's not happening unless you give him a really good defense. And, what will tell me in the draft is if they go and get Kyle Pitts, then that tells me again, they don't believe in him as much as they like to admit. But if they go get someone like a Patrick Surtain at corner, then I'm sitting going, okay, they believe what they have is enough for Prescott to get the best out of it. But a lot of his numbers you got to look deeper into the numbers. You got to look at the score line that, the other teams are putting up to realize why he's throwing for 400 yards, because they're maybe behind by 15 after, going into the second half. So yeah, like it made sense for the Cowboys to pay that, because that's the going rate these days for a quarterback.
Yeah,
I agree.
No, I agree, definitely. Well, thank you guys for joining me. We've pushed nearly 50 minutes of free agency discussion. Hopefully we'll be back within a couple. When is the draft? It's April, right?
Like the very end, I think.
Very end. Wait, let me see if I can. 30th of April, yeah. So hopefully we'll have an episode out. I think it would make more sense to do a post Do you want to make your first 5 pick prediction now, and we'll see how close we were? So if I can get the list up. So who are the Jaguars taking first overall? Is it going to be Trevor Lawrence?
Yes.
Then we've got the Jets at 2.
Wilson.
49ers now at 3. Is it going to be Justin Fields or Mac Jones or Trey Lance?
Yeah, I go Mac Jones.
Falcons at 4.
Kyle Trask.
Really?
I think they probably trade. I suspect somebody moves up before, because the signs are that they're sticking with Matt Ryan. So I imagine somebody is going to offer them a big package. So they probably switch out. But if they keep their pick, their problem's defense. They need an edge rusher, but there's no edge rusher I can think of who's really top 10 caliber. So if they take a pick in the first round, it might be someone like Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, I was going to say Kyle Pitts, but
yeah,
I think they are the premier team to trade down. I think they could get big capital if they trade down. I think that's what we're going to see. But like you said, if they don't, I think it will be Kyle Pitts.
They're drafting a quarterback.
Bengals at
Mark
5.
Dixon.
Are they taking Penei Sewell?
No, I think they take Jamar Chase. I think when you see that, his name's now eluded me. Joe Burrow. When you see that Joe Burrow is basically advocating on all social media that, hey, wouldn't it be great if I linked up with my LSU receiver? That would be something, wouldn't it? He's almost basically saying, you go get Jamar Chase. And the problem is I can make a case for like everything. For the Bengals, they do need to fix the offensive line a little bit, but this is a deep offensive line draft as well as wide receiver draft. It's they can go either way. I don't think they lose by taking Penei. If they take Penei Sewell, I don't think they lose. I don't think they lose if they take Jamar Chase either. If Pitts falls to them, I don't think they lose if they take him. It's kind of a win-win-win-win-win situation for them, but it just depends because some are going to hit more than others. But I think they probably take Jamar Chase.
I think so. Picks 5 and 6 are going to be the interchangeable ones. I think it's going to be Penei Sewell and Jamar Chase are going to be taken at these 2 picks, and whoever takes one is going to take the other. So if Jamar Chase goes first, I think the Dolphins will take Penei Sewell. If it's the other way around, I think the Dolphins will take Jamar Chase if he's available. The Lions at 7. Do you see a wide receiver pick?
Yeah, wait, you don't think they go get Devonta Smith from Alabama?
I think that's going to go to the Lions.
I would suspect the Dolphins take him just for his pure chemistry that he'll have with Tua.
That would be exciting to see.
That as well. I mean, also, how do you turn down the Heisman winner? That's another one.
I did see Devonta Smith did say that he say that he liked Mac Jones as a quarterback more than Tua. He had more of a chemistry with Mac Jones. So maybe they see that as there's possibly an issue.
Yeah, here. Again, there's other ways to look into that. I mean, also as well, we got to remember Devonta Smith was not the number 1 receiver when Tua was there. That was Jerry Jeudy. So there's other ways to look at it. I mean, like, he's obviously going to be fond of the guy who got him the Heisman. So but saying you prefer one person does not mean you don't want to play with the other. I can say like I prefer to play with Cristiano Ronaldo, but if you want me to play with Messi, I'm not going to complain at that either. So I think there's a little bit of tongue in cheek going on there. But,
okay, that's fair enough. We'll go to 10. Panthers at 8. Are they taking Trey Lance?
No,
they're not taking Trey Lance. Who are they taking at 8?
Well, if the Panthers have got Darnold, they'll probably not take another quarterback. So, their offensive line's not bad. I think by that point, Penei Sewell will probably be gone. There's another offensive lineman I can't remember out of Northwestern. He's also predicted to go top 10. Can't remember his name. It completely eludes me. But that's who I think they'll probably end up taking. They don't really need a wide receiver. They've got 2 good receivers there. Their defense is not bad. So they might take one of those corners like a Patrick Surtain, but I suspect they probably take the offensive lineman out of Northwestern.
Okay. Do you agree, Mitchell?
I think they're going to take Surtain. I think he's going to be best available at that point. It's going to be interesting to see what order those two receivers that we're talking about go in, because obviously Devonta had all the hype after the Heisman, but because I truly think all 5 of these quarterbacks will be gone by pick 9.
Right.
It really means someone's going to get Pitts at a nice spot. Someone's going to get guys like Surtain and Devonta Smith at a nice spot. So I think there's just a lot of things in play depending who moves down.
And obviously the next pick being the Broncos, who do you have your team pitching?
I don't know. I have no clue. Because I'm kind of like a best available kind of person here, and there's just not a let's say an offensive lineman or a linebacker in there that I really want that early. So maybe if
you don't like a Micah Parsons.
That's true. If all the quarterbacks are gone, I honestly think the Broncos trade back, and I think they'll get someone to overpay.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm going up based off how my mock draft's gone so far, I would have the Broncos taking Justin Fields if he's available at that point. But as we said before, I think there'll be at least 2 teams that move up in this draft and go get a quarterback somewhere between 4 and 8. There's going to be someone who moves up because all these teams have their quarterbacks. So but at that point, you're pretty much asking yourself, do you have a Hall of Famer you're going to be drafting? If the answer is no, then you probably move back.
They do, but I wouldn't be surprised if Miami trades back again. Just because I think things have changed since they made their last move. But even Detroit, like, are you not tempted to take a quarterback? I think they would be.
You would be, but then you would
have Lance and Fields available.
Yeah, you'd be tempted, but I mean, then the problem becomes, you would have to move Jared Goff at some stage, and if you take a quarterback, you don't want to devalue his stance.
I just think when they made that move, they did not perceive themselves in the mix. They probably were only excited about 3 rookies, and I bet you now they're excited about 5 of them. And I don't think they saw themselves in the mix. So there's very few teams, like the Bengals, absolutely not going to take a quarterback. There are very few teams that I wouldn't be surprised if they had that. They're either going to leverage the shit out of the position or they're going to take someone, and you might be surprised. Even the Dolphins.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even be shocked as well if someone like the Saints mortgaged their whole draft to come up into the top 10 to get a quarterback. It wouldn't shock me either. There's quite a few teams out there like the Steelers as well, who you just look at and you go, do you know, if the quarterback draft class for next year is supposed to be terrible, then they might shoot up into the top 10. The problem is I can basically make a case that the top 3 teams that need a quarterback are in the top 3. Outside of that, it's very hard then to see a team that desperately needs a quarterback. Maybe Washington, but that's really it. I mean, outside of that, I can't think of one who immediately springs to mind and needs a quarterback.
And the final pick, Dallas Cowboys. I see them taking Surtain here, going against maybe taking an upgrade at the offensive line. I think getting a shutdown corner here will help their pretty woeful pass defense. So I see a Patrick Surtain pick for the Cowboys here. Do you guys agree, or do you disagree?
I think Surtain's gone, so they could, if they want to keep with corner, they could go get JC Horn, or they could go for that offensive line and get a guy like Rashawn Slater. But everyone.
He's the Northwestern guy, isn't he? Rashawn Slater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I would basically just say what is the most appealing and sexy pick to Jerry Jones at that point. Which would be Jalen Waddle, which it wouldn't shock me in the slightest if he just went, yeah, let's have 4 receivers on the field at one time. So, I mean, they've done it before. When they got Zeke Elliott, they probably should have moved up to get Joey Bosa. But, Jerry will do whatever Jerry wants to do, and they're so unpredictable. Because what did we all say going into this offseason? They have to fix their defense, and they haven't done it. So you would think logically it would be to go get someone like Patrick Surtain or Micah Parsons, but yeah, it's the Cowboys. The Cowboys just do whatever puts them on the headlines the most.
That's true. Well, thank you guys for joining me today. I know it's been quite a while, so we've had to get back into the flow of doing our podcast, but we're at nearly an hour of solid discussion. So yeah, thank you guys for coming on. We'll definitely do a post-draft podcast to see how our picks differed. But yeah, thank you guys for joining me, and I will see you guys in the next episode, which will be hopefully in 2 or 3 weeks. But we'll see how close we stick to the schedule. Thank you for watching, everybody, and farewell.
Good chat, guys. See ya.
See you there.